welcome back to Belle's Books. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe for more video content just like this. So today I'm going to be talking you through my Romeo and Juliet study guide. So first of all, let me just say that this is designed for any GCSE, A-level, IB, MYP or any other similar qualification aged and level student who needs to study Romeo and Juliet for school as a text. Whether you're taking an exam, whether you're writing an essay, this is the video that is going to help you study and master this topic. Now, I have also designed a printable, downloadable PDF study guide for Romeo and Juliet. If you would like to purchase that, it's only a couple of pounds and it's an absolute bargain. Then you can click the link in the bio down below, which will take you to my Etsy shop where you can purchase it. This one-off purchase will give you access to the guide forever for you to download, answer the questions about background setting, characters, themes, symbols, structure and language, answer the practiced essay questions, and go through a scene-by-scene plot summary. And now let's get into the video. So, a little bit of background. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare sometime between 1591 and 1594. It tells the story of two feuding families and Romeo and Juliet, lovers who are destined never to be together. Fun fact, Romeo and Juliet wasn't a brand new story when Shakespeare wrote it. It was actually probably based on the love story of Romeo and Julieta. Their love story was set in Verona, just like Romeo and Juliet, and it's very likely that Shakespeare's audience would have already been familiar with it. So, setting. Romeo and Juliet is set in Verona, Italy in the 14th century, which is the 1300s. Verona was once an independent state within Italy, and the play is set during this time of independence as the city has its own prince who rules over it. Shakespeare's audience would have thought of Italy as a place of passion, and this play is incredibly passionate. Let's run through some characters. First of all, we have Juliet Capulet. She's the daughter of Lord Capulet and Lady Capulet. She's 13 years old and she's quite naive. She falls in love quickly when she meets Romeo and then grows up quickly as well. Her closest friend is the nurse, who's also a kind of mother figure to her. Next we have Romeo Montague. He is the son of Lord Montague and Lady Montague. He's around 16 years old, very attractive, very intelligent. His best friend is his cousin Benvolio, and he's also close to Friar Lawrence. However, he's obsessed with love. When the play starts, he's in love with a girl called Rosalind, but he soon falls in love with Juliet instead. When he falls in love with Juliet, everyone questions whether or not his feelings are real, but he proves that they are, first by marrying her and then by dying for her. So, next we have the chorus. The chorus is a character who acts as a narrator. They comment on the plot and the themes of the play. Lord and Lady Capulet. Juliet's mother and father, they're in a feud with the Montagues. They love Juliet very much, but they don't know her very well. Lord Capulet wants Juliet to marry Paris. Lord and Lady Montague, who are Romeo's mother and father. Friar Lawrence. A friar is a religious man, kind of like a monk or a priest. Friar Lawrence is Romeo's friend and also Juliet's. He knows a lot about plants and herbs. He's the one who helps Romeo and Juliet secretly get married. The nurse, as we know, Juliet's nurse and closest friend, she likes to make some inappropriate jokes sometimes. Tybalt Capulet, Juliet's cousin, violent, vain, and he hates the Montagues. Benvolio Montague, Romeo's cousin and best friend. He's a peacemaker and he spends most of his on-stage time trying to distract Romeo from his love. Mercutio, Romeo's friend. He's comedic, makes a lot of very sexual jokes, he's very quick to anger, but he's also very realistic. He's always annoyed by Romeo, who's constantly chatting about love. Then we have Paris, the man Lord Capulet wants Juliet to marry, and Prince Aeschylus, the Prince of Verona, who is related to Mercutio and Paris, and he's really focused on keeping the city in a sense of peace. Then we have Samson and Gregory, servants of the Capulets, and Peter, another servant of the Capulets. And then we have Balthazar, who is Romeo's servant. Let me run you through a quick plot summary. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet tells the story of Juliet Capulet and Romeo Montague, a young woman and a young man from two different families. They fall in love with each other, but unfortunately they're destined towards tragedy. Because their families are feuding, they can never be together, so they have to keep their love a secret. They get married secretly, and at the end of the play, they end up having to kill themselves rather than live without each other as their families separate them due to some very eventful, very violent circumstances. Now, if you head to the printable, downloadable PDF study guide, which I've got linked down below, you can actually go through a scene-by-scene summary of the play, which I have written out for you and included questions. Let me show you. So this is what the scene-by-scene summary will look like. What you basically have is the title of each scene, and then a short summary, and then a question underneath with space for you to answer. So you can see that for the prologue, I've just included one question, and then for other scenes, I've included 3, sometimes quite long ones, for you to have a think and really dive into this text and get to know it incredibly well. Right, next, let's talk about themes. What's a theme? A theme is the main idea of a text. The 4 key themes, there are more, but these are the main ones, of Romeo and Juliet are love, family, fate, and conflict. These themes are really interconnected and they overlap a lot. In fact, it can kind of be hard to talk about one of them without bringing up the other 3. So, in Romeo and Juliet, the idea of love is explored. The power of love, the way that love impacts people, and where love comes from are all ideas present throughout the play. There are different kinds of love present in the play. So, for example, familial love. Juliet's parents love her, they care for her, but they don't know her very well. Passionate love. Romeo and Juliet fall in love quite quickly, based mostly on looking at each other without really knowing anything about who the other person is. We have friendships between the characters, the friendship between Friar Lawrence and Romeo, and the friendship between the nurse and Juliet, for example, or perhaps the friendship between Benvolio and Romeo. Although we kind of think of love as quite a positive force in a lot of different cases, in Romeo and Juliet, love really comes across as something that is both good and bad. Eventually, love does unite the 2 families. They love their children and they're sorry they died, so they agree to put an end to their feud. But love itself causes all kinds of death within the play itself. Romeo dies, Juliet dies, all for loving one another. And in that case, love is a really heartbreaking force. The next theme is family. In Romeo and Juliet, family is a major theme. Both Romeo and Juliet have a duty to their families. They have to obey them and they have to honour them. But as the couple falls more and more in love, which happens at the same time as their families are getting more and more violent and the feud is really intensifying, we see Romeo and Juliet kind of, and quite suddenly, need to choose between their families and their love for one another. And at the end of the day, they decide that their love for one another is greater than their love for their family. You might want to think about some key family relationships in this play and think about how they affect the course of the play. So for example, how does Lord Capulet's love for Juliet affect the choices he makes? He wants her to be married, so he encourages her to marry Paris, but at the same time he pushes her away from him by kind of forcing her into something that she doesn't quite want without ever really talking to her or giving her the opportunity. The family feud is eventually resolved, but the feud itself kills so many people. Something you should think about is the negative impact of the family on Romeo and Juliet. They feel a lot of pressure from their families, and their families make a lot of bad choices, including the feud and the death and the fighting, which kind of push them into having to take kind of ridiculous actions quite quickly. The third theme is fate. In the very beginning of the play, we know that Romeo and Juliet are destined to have a tragic end. They're called star-crossed lovers at the very start of the play, which basically means that the stars have decided they are to be lovers, but they are never to be united properly. There's this kind of idea that everything is predetermined and inescapable. Throughout the play, you get this building sense of foreboding that something really tragic is going to happen, and of course it does. Both Romeo and Juliet dies. I'd really recommend that at this point you consider going back through the play and thinking about finding different quotes that show the inescapable fate that Romeo and Juliet are headed towards. If you want help with this question and thinking about this, then definitely check out my study guide as well, because that goes into a lot more depth about all this and gives you the tools you need to find those quotes and offers you some suggestions. The final theme is conflict, which of course is what we've been talking about with the feuding family and the love and the hate and the fated lives that they're living. So the key conflict is obviously the one between the Montagues and the Capulets. They have this age-old feud that means that they can never support each other or be nice to each other or even endure living near one another. And as a result of this, there are all kinds of battles and arguments. So for example, Tybalt and Romeo fight Juliet and Lord Capulet argue. There's all kinds of secrecy, for example at the masquerade ball when Romeo sneaks in wearing his mask to disguise himself as a Capulet. Now let's go through a few different symbols. In terms of literature, a symbol is something in a text that represents something else. So in Romeo and Juliet there are 5 key symbols that you should consider and memorize. First of all, fire. Fire genuinely means overwhelming passion, and it could be passionate love or it could be passionate hate. So you might want to find some instances in the text where fire gets mentioned, or burning, or flames, things like that, which kind of signify that there's a passionate moment going on. The next one is stars, and stars are representative of the fate, because in the olden days we kind of had this belief that the events on earth were determined by the heavens or by the stars. In thinking about this, you might think about religion, but you might also think about things like horoscopes and how the stars are said to kind of influence worldly life, and that's the same kind of idea. That's why Romeo and Juliet were called star-crossed lovers, for example, because the fate was in control of their love. Next up we have poison. Poison is representative of death. Of course, Juliet poisons herself, and Friar Lawrence tends to his garden, which is full of poisonous flowers, and there are all kinds of poisonous plants mentioned in this play, which are indicative of death and the death that is coming. So next we have roses. Roses are an interesting symbol in Romeo and Juliet because they can symbol Juliet herself, they can symbolize love, or they can symbolize death. And finally, masks, which symbolize secrecy. I was talking about this a little bit before with the masquerade ball. Everyone is kind of wrapped up in who they are, and they're concealing their faces and hiding themselves at this ball, and it enables people who aren't supposed to be there to sneak in, like Romeo. Right, now let's go through structure and language. Understanding the structure and the language of a play is incredibly important because it can help us think about why the playwright, and in this case why Shakespeare, designed the play the way that he did. It can help us think about what he was trying to make the audience think and feel. Identifying what an author or playwright was trying to make their readers or audience think and feel is analysis, which is a vital part of studying any text. So first of all, structure. Structure is about how the text is organized. So we might think about how it's organized into acts and then organized into scenes. A really good exercise to do at this point is to go through and summarize every single scene in one sentence. This will really help you see how the story develops and how it's structured. What happens in every scene? What's the importance of every scene? Why did Shakespeare choose to include that scene? What effect does it have on the rest of the play? Another thing to consider when thinking about the structure of Romeo and Juliet is the prologue. Shakespeare begins Romeo and Juliet with a prologue that explains the entire plot. Why would he choose to do this? Here's a hint. Basically, the play wasn't intended to surprise the audience. The audience was supposed to know what was going on, and there are multiple reasons for this. First of all, it shifts the focus of the play and the audience from plot onto something else. Understanding that something terrible is going to happen at the end of the play makes the audience anticipate it and look for clues that they know that it's coming up soon and how it's going to happen. Also directs your understanding of the play, which can be useful when you're watching something, to know where it's going. If you're watching something and it's in quite a crowded environment and there are a lot of distractions and maybe you step out, it can be good to know what's happening, even if you don't know the individual steps that the play is going to take to get to the end point. And next, let's talk about language. Language is all about the words used by the playwright. So when you're thinking about the language of Romeo and Juliet, and you'll be analysing quotations that you want to use in your essay or memorise for your exam, you should think about these different things. What is the language device that the playwright, that Shakespeare, is using? So a language device is a type of powerful language. So this could be a simile, a metaphor, a piece of imagery, a symbol. I included a list for you before. A theme, foreshadowing, and so much more. So when you see a quotation, first, what language device is Shakespeare using here? Next, think about why this language device has been used. Why did he choose to include a metaphor there? What significance does it have? What does it make the audience think or feel? And if you can remember to do this every single time you talk about language in Romeo and Juliet, you will ace your exam. You will do so well in your essay, I promise you this. Right, so I hope this video has helped you understand Romeo and Juliet a little bit more so that you can study the text with confidence and go into your next assessment knowing that you're going to nail it. Don't forget, you can download my printable PDF study guide for this text in the description box down below. It's only a few pounds and it will genuinely change your life as you study Romeo and Juliet. Right, so I'm going to close with a couple of practice essay questions, which are samples from the essay questions that I include in my PDF study guide. I think I've got 15 or 20 of them in there for you to really practice writing your essays and writing about Romeo and Juliet. But here are a couple for you to write some practice essays on right now. So, focusing on the prologue, consider how Shakespeare presents Romeo and Juliet as fated to die. Compare Romeo's reaction to his exile with Juliet's reaction to Romeo's exile. How are they different or similar? Compare and contrast Juliet at the start of the play to Juliet at the end of the play. Does she grow more mature? Does she change? Why has she changed? On that note, I am going to finish this video. I really hope it has helped you. Please leave a comment down below telling me what study guide you'd like to see next, because I am planning on making another one very soon. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more book and study related content, and you can follow my Instagram at bellsbooks for daily book related updates. Have a fantastic day. Bye!